The sun was burning high in the sky, and the desert stretched far in every direction, endless and cruel. A young alien girl walked slowly across the hot sand, her feet heavy, her wrists and ankles bound with iron chains. She was weak, thirsty, and afraid. Her skin shimmered faintly under the sun, marked with dust and bruises. Every step felt like a punishment. Every breath felt heavy. Behind her, two traders pushed her forward, treating her like she was nothing. She kept her head down, but inside her mind, fear was screaming. She knew where they were taking her, to be sold like an object, to a human. Her people always told stories about humans. Humans were monsters. Humans were cruel. Humans loved to hurt. She had heard stories of aliens taken by humans and never returning. Some said they were tortured until they broke. Others said they were used as tools, as slaves, as toys. She believed those stories with all her heart, and now her time had come. When the caravan reached a lonely outpost in the desert, the traders stopped. There stood a man waiting. He was middle-aged, with tired eyes and a face marked by years of hardship. His clothes were simple, a desert coat and worn boots. He looked like an ordinary human traveler. Yet to her, he was more terrifying than the sun itself. This was the man who would buy her. This was the monster who would own her. The deal was quick. The traders exchanged words, coins, and then they left her in his hands. The alien girl's heart pounded as she lowered her gaze. She dared not look at him. Her body trembled. She thought, "This is the end. This is the man who will destroy me." The human did not speak. He only looked at her for a moment, his eyes unreadable. Then he turned and began to walk. With a gesture of his hand, he ordered her to follow. The chains rattled with each step she took behind him. Her fear grew with every sound of the metal. The desert wind whistled, carrying dust across the air. It felt like the whole world was watching her walk to her doom. The man led her away from the outpost, far into the silent sands. He carried no whip, no weapon. Yet his silence was worse than shouting. She wanted to scream, to beg, but her throat was dry. The only sound between them was the echo of her chains and the whisper of the wind. In her mind, dark thoughts filled her. She remembered what her mother once said before she was taken. "Never trust a human. They are not like us. They smile while they hurt you." The girl believed that warning with every beat of her heart. She imagined what pain was waiting for her. She imagined a cage, a room of fire, sharp tools, endless screams. Her steps slowed as terror tried to freeze her body, but the man did not turn or force her. He only walked ahead, steady and calm. From time to time, he looked back, just to make sure she was following. There was no cruelty in his eyes, but she could not see that. All she saw was a mask, hiding the monster inside. The sun dropped lower in the sky as they kept walking. Her body grew weaker, her lips cracked with thirst. Finally, she stumbled and fell to her knees in the sand. The chains clattered against the ground. She expected a kick, a strike, or a harsh word. But instead, something surprising happened. The man stopped, turned, and came closer. From his bag, he pulled out a small flask of water. He held it toward her without a word. The girl stared at it in disbelief. Her hands shook as she reached forward. Was this a trick? Was this part of his cruel game? She drank, the cool liquid burning her dry throat. For the first time since she was taken, she felt life return to her body. She looked up at him with wide eyes. The man only nodded once, then turned to continue the path. The girl followed, confused, her fear still. Strong but now joined by something new. Doubt, maybe. Maybe the monster was not what she thought. But her heart whispered again, "Don't trust him. He will hurt you soon." And so the desert stretched before them, endless and uncertain. Her chains were still heavy, her fear still alive. Yet in her chest, a question had begun to grow, a question that would change everything. The desert night came slowly, and the heat of the day began to fade. The alien girl walked behind the human, her chains clinking softly with every step. The sky turned purple. Stars began to appear. Cold wind touched her skin, but her fear was still burning inside her heart. She kept her eyes low, never daring to look directly at the man. In her mind, she imagined what would happen once they stopped walking. Would he tie her down? Would he begin the torture? The stories she had heard from her people echoed louder now. Humans smile while they hurt you. Humans pretend to be kind, but inside, they are wolves. The human finally stopped near a cluster of rocks that gave some shelter from the wind. He placed his bag on the ground and began to set up a small fire. The flames glowed orange, lighting his face in the darkness. To her, the fire looked like a signal of pain. Fire meant punishment. Fire meant screams. She trembled, her body stiff, her chains rattling as she stepped back. The man noticed, his eyes watching her carefully, but he said nothing. He only kept working with the fire. Soon the smell of cooked food filled the air. Her empty stomach cried with hunger. Still, she did not move. Her people said humans feed their slaves before torture, to make them stronger for pain. Her fear twisted every small act into horror. When the food was ready, the man tore a piece and offered it to her. The girl froze, staring at his hand. She wanted to grab it, to eat, but her mind screamed, "Trap!" Her chains rattled as she slowly reached out. She took the food carefully, as if it might burn her. Then she ate quickly, tears rising in her eyes from hunger and shame. It was the first real food she had eaten in days. The man gave no reaction. He simply ate his own share in silence. The fire cracked softly, and the desert stretched around them, endless and cold. The girl kept her distance, curling up on the sand. She hugged her knees, whispering in her language. She prayed for the night to end. She prayed that somehow tomorrow would not bring pain, but fear never left her. Her eyes were wide, shining in the firelight, watching the human like a cornered animal. He noticed, though he never spoke, he saw the fear in her eyes, raw, deep, unending, a fear that had been planted long before he met her. He gave a long sigh, as though carrying a weight older than himself. Then he spread his coat on the sand, leaving it near her. He did not force her to take it. He simply lay down on his side, facing away, and closed his eyes. The alien girl did not move for a long time. Her body shook with cold, her mind still whispering warnings, yet she could not understand this man. Why had he given her water? Why had he fed her? Why did he sleep with his back turned when he could have done anything? Slowly, she reached for the coat, pulling it around herself. It was warm, smelling of dust and leather. She pressed her face against it, fighting tears. It had been so long since anyone had shown her even a small kindness, but her heart still argued. Do not believe him. He will betray you. The stars moved across the sky. The human slept in silence, his breathing steady. The girl lay awake, unable to close her eyes. Every sound in the desert made her jump. Every flicker of the fire made her think of hidden blades. Her fear was alive, sitting inside her like a shadow. And yet, beneath all that fear, something small began to grow. It was not trust, not yet. It was a question, quiet but strong. What if the stories were wrong? The night passed slowly, and the first light of dawn touched the sand. She sat up, her body aching, her eyes heavy. The man woke and looked at her once, then began to put out the fire. No words passed between them, but for the first time, she felt that maybe his silence was not cruel. Maybe his silence was a shield, hiding a truth she could not yet see. She still feared him, yes, but in her heart, she could not deny what her eyes had witnessed. He had the chance to hurt her, and he did not. He had the chance to break her, and he did not. Her fear was strong, but doubt was stronger now, and that doubt would change everything. The desert morning was cold, but the sun soon rose with sharp light. The alien girl followed the human once again, her chains heavy, her steps slow. Sand stretched far ahead, endless waves of gold and dust. Her throat was dry, but she dared not ask for water. Her fear still ruled her heart. The man walked in silence, his back straight, his movements steady. He did not speak, he did not smile, he did not show anger. He was simply quiet, like stone. To the girl, that silence was frightening. She wondered what he was thinking. Did he plan her torture already? Was he imagining the pain he would cause? Her people always said humans loved cruelty, and this one, she thought, was only hiding it. Hours passed, and the sun grew hot. The girl stumbled often, her chains cutting her ankles. Each time she fell, she expected him to strike her. But he never did. He only paused, waited for her to rise again, and continued walking. His eyes, when they met hers, were unreadable. Not cruel, not kind, simply distant. That silence was worse than shouting, worse than rage. It was a mystery that made her heart beat faster with fear. At midday, he stopped near a dry canyon where shade rested. He pulled out his flask and drank slowly. Then he held it out to her once more. Her hands trembled as she took it, her eyes watching him carefully. Was this kindness real, or was it just a game? Her people said humans trick their slaves with small comforts before. The real suffering begins. She drank anyway because her body begged for it, but inside she whispered, "This is not mercy. This is only a delay." The man ate some dried food. Again, he broke off a piece and placed it near her. She ate quickly. Though shame burned inside her, she wanted to believe the food was safe, but every bite felt like swallowing fear. After they rested, the man stood and looked at the horizon. His face was calm, yet tired. The girl watched him, searching for the monster beneath his skin, but she could not see it. She saw only a silent stranger, whose eyes carried weight of something she could not name. That evening, when the sun was low, a dust storm rose from the distance. Winds howled, sand lifted into the air like waves. The man pulled her quickly toward a rocky shelter. Inside, the storm roared outside like a beast. Sand scraped against stone, the world turning into chaos. The girl crouched in the corner, hugging her chains. Her fear said, "Now he will strike. Now he will reveal himself." But instead, he pulled off his coat and placed it around her again. The warmth shielded her from the storm's chill. She stared at him in confusion. Why? Why give her comfort when he could give her pain? He did not explain. He only sat near the cave wall, silent, his eyes closed, his breathing calm. The girl whispered in her language, "He is not like the stories." But then her fear answered, "Silence hides danger. Silence hides the knife." She shook, unsure what to believe. Was he truly different, or was he waiting for the right time? The storm raged for hours. The man stayed near the entrance, guarding. She realized he was not only protecting himself, he was also shielding her. Her heart beat faster, not with fear alone now, but with something strange, confusion, curiosity, even a spark of fragile hope. When the storm ended, the desert was quiet. Gain. The man rose and checked the path. Then he looked back at her, his gaze steady. For a moment their eyes locked. No words were spoken, but in that silence, she saw something she did not expect. Not cruelty, not greed, but pain. A silent sorrow, deep and hidden. She lowered her eyes quickly, her heart torn in two. The stories of her people shouted in her head. Humans are monsters, but her own eyes whispered, "This one is not." As they walked again beneath the fading stars, she realized the truth was no longer clear. The silent stranger had become a puzzle she could not solve. And puzzles were dangerous, because once she started to wonder, she could no longer stop. The desert was quiet, the wind carrying only whispers across the endless sand. The alien girl followed the human, her chains dragging behind her, leaving thin lines on the ground. Her body was weak, but her mind was even heavier. Fear clung to her like a shadow that never left. As they walked, she remembered the voices of her people, the old stories told at night, when the fires burned low and the children huddled close. Stories of humans, creatures from the stars who brought nothing but pain. Her mother's voice echoed the loudest. "Never trust a human. They take what they want and leave only ashes." She remembered a girl from her village, a cousin with bright eyes and laughter like rain. One night, raiders came, and among them were humans. Her cousin was dragged away, screaming. The elders said she was sold, never seen again. From that day, The word human was like poison on her tongue. Now she was walking with one, not just any human, but her new master. She could not understand why he had not hurt her yet. Maybe he was patient. Maybe he enjoyed watching fear grow. The thought made her shiver. That night, when they stopped to rest, the man built another fire. The flames flickered across the stone walls of a small canyon. She curled up in the shadows, hugging her knees. Every spark of firelight reminded her of old tales. Humans burning villages, humans laughing while homes turned to smoke. Her people's songs were full of loss, always ending with the same truth. Humans are monsters wearing the mask of men. The man noticed her shivering. He tore a piece of cloth from his pack and tossed it toward her. It was rough but warm. She hesitated, her heart racing. Was this kindness or another trap? Slowly, she wrapped it around herself, still whispering in her mind, "He will strike soon." When she closed her eyes, the memories grew sharper. She dreamed of chains, of cages filled with her people. She saw humans walking among them, pointing, buying, trading lives like goods. She woke with a start, gasping for air. Her eyes darted toward the human. He was awake, sitting by the fire, his face lost in thought. He looked tired, not cruel, but tired. Yet she could not believe it. Tired eyes could still belong to a monster. The next morning, as they walked, the girl dared to whisper a question in her language. "Why not hurt me?" Of course he did not answer. He did not know her tongue, but the words hung in the air, carried away by the wind. She felt foolish, yet also desperate. If she could understand his silence, maybe her fear would end. The man stopped at a ridge and looked across the desert. His gaze was steady, as if searching for something far away. The girl stared at his back, her memories screaming inside her. One memory was clearest of all. Her father, standing in the doorway of their home, shouting as humans approached. She remembered his last words. "Run, child, run from them." But she had not run far enough. Her eyes filled with tears as the memory wrapped around her heart. Every step she took behind the human felt like betrayal. Her father's voice warned her. Her mother's stories guided her, and yet her own eyes told her another story. The human had not hurt her, had not said her, had not treated her like the monsters from the tales. This war inside her grew stronger each day. That night, under the stars, she lay awake again. The man slept quietly, his coat covering her. She whispered to the sky, "Are the stories wrong? Or is he only waiting?" The stars gave no answer, only silent light. Her memories said one truth, her eyes showed another, and between them, her heart began to break. She turned to look at the man once more. His face was calm, peaceful in sleep. But even in that peace, she searched for cruelty. She could not find it. Yet still, the memories of monsters screamed louder, and she did not know which voice to believe. The desert night was colder than she had expected. The wind cut against her skin, slipping through the thin cloth wrapped around her shoulders. The alien girl shivered, hugging her knees, trying to make herself small. Her chains rattled softly, sharp reminders of her place. She thought the man would enjoy her suffering, but he did something strange. Without a word, he rose from his place near the fire. He walked over, carrying a heavy blanket from his pack. He dropped it beside her, not forcing it on her, just leaving it there. Then he returned to his spot, sitting quietly with his back against a rock. The girl stared at the blanket, frozen with confusion. Why? Why would a human give comfort to a slave? Her people always said humans fed fear, not warmth. They took, they broke, they never gave. Yet here was a human, offering her shelter from the cold. Her heart pounded, her breath uneven. She wanted to refuse, to push the blanket away, but the icy wind bit her skin, and her body betrayed her. Slowly, with trembling hands, she pulled the blanket over herself. Warmth spread across her body, soft and steady. Tears rose to her eyes, hot against the cold night. She hated herself for feeling relief, hated that a human's kindness could touch her so deeply. She lay awake for a long time, watching him. The man had closed his eyes, his face calm in the firelight. He looked Ed older than she thought, with lines etched into his skin. Not the face of a cruel monster, but of someone who had lived too many years of hardship. Still, she reminded herself, do not trust him. Kindness can be a weapon sharper than a blade. When morning came, the man woke early. He handed her a piece of dried fruit before starting the day's journey. The sweetness burst on her tongue, strange and new. She almost smiled, but quickly swallowed the feeling. It was dangerous to feel anything but fear. As they walked, she tried to watch him more closely. He never pulled her chains, never raised his hand. When she stumbled, he stopped and waited. When the sun burned hot, he shared his water. She could not understand him. Every act of mercy only made her more afraid, because mercy was not human. At least that was what she had always believed. By evening, they reached a cluster of cliffs. The man built another fire, his movements slow but practiced. She watched him from the shadows. The flames reflected in her wide eyes. Her heart twisted painfully. She remembered nights in her village, sitting by fires with her family. Her mother's songs, her father's laughter, her cousin's smile, all gone now, stolen by raiders and chains. And here she sat with the one creature her people called the enemy. Yet he did not laugh at her pain. He did not strike her when she was weak. He simply gave her food, gave her water, gave her warmth. When the fire burned low, the man glanced at her. For a moment, their eyes met. She expected coldness, cruelty, something sharp. But instead, his gaze was steady, quiet, almost human in a way she did not recognize. It unsettled her more than anger would have, because cruelty was simple. Cruelty she understood. But kindness? Kindness from a human was impossible. Later, as she lay under the blanket again, her thoughts turned restless. She whispered to herself, "Why? Why does he not hurt me?" The stars above gave no answer, only silence. The same silence the man carried with him. It was a silence that confused her, broke her walls, a silence filled not with threats, but with something else, something she had no word for, and so she drifted to sleep, her chains still heavy, her fear still strong, but deep inside her, hidden like a spark beneath ash, a new feeling stirred, not trust, not yet, but the beginning of doubt. And doubt was the first crack in the walls of fear. The alien girl's wrists burned under the weight of her iron chains. Every step sent pain shooting through her ankles. The skin rubbed raw. Her body felt weak, but her mind was even weaker, filled with fear and confusion. The man walked ahead in silence as always. His boots pressed deep marks into the sand, steady and calm. She followed, dragging her chains behind her, the sound sharp and bitter. Every rattle reminded her of what she was: property, a slave, a prisoner. No matter how much water he gave her, no matter how much food, she told herself she was still not free. When the sun was at its highest, they stopped in the shade of a tall rock. The man dropped his pack and looked at her carefully. His eyes lingered on her wrists, on the bruises dark against her green skin. She quickly pulled her arms close, ashamed, afraid. Would he mock her weakness? Would he use her suffering as amusement? Instead, he knelt down and opened his pack. From inside, he pulled out a small iron tool. The girl froze, her chest tight. A tool. Was this the beginning of pain? Her people had told her humans used sharp tools to break their slaves. She stepped back, chains clattering loudly on the stone. Her voice cracked as she whispered in her tongue, "No, please." Though she knew he could not understand, the man did not move closer. He only raised the tool slowly and pointed toward the shackles on her wrists. Then, with calm patience, he tapped the chains. Clink, clink, iron against iron. Her eyes would ease. In shock, he was not holding a weapon to harm. He was holding a tool to free. Still, she did not believe it at once. Her fear screamed, "It's a trick. He will hurt you the moment you lower your guard." But then she saw his face, steady, without cruelty. A quiet determination lived there. He reached forward, and before she could run, the tool slipped into the lock. With a firm twist, the first shackle snapped open. The weight fell from her right wrist with a heavy sound. The girl gasped, pulling her hand close to her chest. The skin was bruised and raw, but the air against it felt like freedom. She stared at him, unable to speak. He said nothing, only moved to the next lock. Click, crack. Another shackle fell. Her other wrist was free. She shook her arms, feeling lighter. Though still trembling with fear, she looked down at the broken chains in the sand. Her heart raced, torn between disbelief and hope. The man then knelt to her ankles. Again the tool slipped into the iron. Crack. The first shackle opened. Clink. The second one followed. Her ankles were free for the first time in what felt like forever. The girl stumbled back, falling to her knees. She touched her bare wrists, her bare ankles. Tears filled her eyes, hot and unstoppable. She whispered, "Free." In her language, the words sounded strange, like a dream not meant to be real. The man stood and put the tool back in his pack. He did not smile. He did not claim victory. He only looked at her and nodded. Then he turned away, as if freeing her was nothing important, as if it was the simplest act in the world. The girl could not move. Her whole body shook, her heart a storm. This was the kindness she could not understand. No monster would remove chains. No monster would give freedom. But if he was not a monster, then what was he? For the rest of that day, she walked behind him with no chains. The desert felt different. The air lighter. She touched her wrists again and again, afraid the shackles would suddenly return. Her fear was still alive, whispering that it was all temporary, that he would soon reveal the true cruelty. But another voice, faint and stubborn, whispered louder now, "He saved you." That night, as she lay under the stars, she looked at her wrists. The bruises would take time to heal, but the chains were gone, and with them, the first cracks in her wall of fear grew wider. She still did not trust him. She still did not understand him. But in her heart, she knew one truth. The chains were broken, and nothing would ever feel the same again. The chains were gone, but the fear still remained. The alien girl walked behind the human through the silent desert, her wrists light, but her heart heavy. Every step reminded her that she was free to run now. Nothing tied her to him, nothing forced her to follow, and yet she stayed. That night, they stopped near a cluster of broken cliffs. The firelight flickered against the stone, shadows dancing like spirits on the wall. The man sat near the flames, quiet as always, his face hidden beneath the glow. The girl sat at a distance, clutching the blanket he had given her. Her eyes never left him, sharp with suspicion. Why free me? She asked herself again and again. Monsters did not remove chains, but maybe they used freedom as another trick. She thought of running. The desert was wide, endless. If she ran fast, maybe she could vanish. Her people might be far away, but freedom meant hope. Her fingers twitched, her legs tense. Every bone in her body screamed, "Go, run, escape while you can." The man reached into his pack and pulled out bread. He ate slowly, not looking at her. Then, without a word, he placed another piece of food on the stone between them. Her stomach growled, and her eyes narrowed. Kindness again. Was it real, or was it the cage with invisible walls? Later, when he lay down to sleep, she stayed awake. The stars above glittered, the wind whispered through the rocks. Her mind argued, endlessly. If she stayed, he might betray her tomorrow. If she left, she might die in the desert, weak and alone. What choice was worse? She remembered her cousin, taken long ago. Would she have wanted her to run? She remembered her father's last words. "Run, child." Tears stung her eyes, but when she looked at the man, asleep under the cold sky, she hesitated. His face in the firelight looked tired, not cruel. She hated the thought, but she saw no monster there. Her body shook as she stood slowly, her bare feet pressing into the sand. She turned toward the open desert. The horizon stretched endlessly, calling her name. 1 step, 2 steps. The freedom was real. No chain pulled her back. No voice ordered her to stop. But her legs froze. The desert was vast, cruel, filled with storms and raiders. She was weak, her body still recovering from days without care. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the horizon. "Run," whispered the memory of her people. "Stay," whispered the silence of the man. She sank back down, wrapping the blanket tighter. Her choice was not clear. She wanted freedom, but she also wanted to live. And for now, the human was her only shield against the desert. But she told herself this was not trust, this was survival, only survival. The next morning, the man woke and glanced at her. He said nothing, only handed her water before they set out again. Her lips trembled as she drank. Part of her wanted to thank him, but the words would not come. Instead, she looked away, ashamed of her weakness. As they walked, she touched her bare wrists again and again. The chains were gone, but the choice was not. She could run at any time, yet her steps still followed his. Her heart whispered questions she had no answer for. Why had he freed her? Why did she stay? That night, when she closed her eyes, she told herself, "Tomorrow I will decide." But tomorrow came, and she still walked behind him, because in the desert, choices were heavy, and freedom was more frightening than chains. The desert stretched endless, but the silence between them grew heavier than the sand. The alien girl walked behind the human as always, her wrists free now, her ankles unbound, yet she still felt trapped. Trapped not by chains of iron, but by chains of questions, questions she could not ignore. Why did he buy her only to remove her shackles? Why had he not hurt her when he had every chance? Why did he look at her sometimes with eyes full of sorrow instead of cruelty? That night, they stopped near a dry riverbed. The fire glowed against the stones, casting long shadows. The man sat as usual, quiet, his face hidden in half-light. The girl stared at him, her confusion growing sharper. She could not keep the words inside any longer. In her own language she whispered, "Who are you?" Of course he did not understand, but the question still filled the air. The silence that followed felt different, heavy with something unspoken. The man pulled something from his pack, not food, not water, but a small, folded cloth. He held it in his hands for a long time before slowly opening it. Inside was a locket, old and worn. He stared at it quietly, his thumb brushing across the surface as if it carried both pain and comfort. The girl tilted her head, curious. Her fear held her back, but her eyes could not look away. At last, he spoke, his voice low, rough with years of silence. "She was my daughter," he said in his human tongue. The girl did not understand the words, but she heard the weight in them, a weight that spoke of loss. He opened the locket, and for the first time she saw the image inside. It was faded, but clear enough. A young girl with bright eyes, smiling in the light of a world far away. The alien girl froze, her breath caught in her throat. This human had once been a father. His voice broke the silence again, softer this time. "They took her. Chains, traitors, lie, you." She understood no words, but she understood the tears in his eyes. He closed the locket and pressed it to his chest. For a long moment, he sat still, the firelight flickering across his tired face. Then he looked at her, and though she could not grasp his language, she felt the meaning. He had freed her because once someone had not freed his child. Her heart trembled. The stories she had always believed painted humans as monsters. But what monster carried sorrow like this? What monster freed a slave because he knew the pain of losing one? She curled deeper into the blanket, her mind torn in pieces. Her people's voices still shouted inside her head. Humans lie, humans destroy. But her own eyes whispered another truth. This one knows pain, this one understands. The man tucked the locket back into his coat and turned away. The desert wind howled softly, carrying their silence. She did not dare speak, but inside her thoughts grew louder. Perhaps he was not her captor at all. Perhaps he was something else, something she had no name for. That night, she dreamed not of monsters, but of the locket. She dreamed of the girl inside, smiling free. When she woke, her cheeks were wet with tears. The man was already awake, standing at the edge of the riverbed, watching the horizon. He looked like someone carrying a weight too heavy for one life, and for the first time, she felt not only fear for him, but sorrow with him. She did not understand his words, but she understood his silence. It was not the silence of cruelty, it was the silence of grief, and grief was something she knew all too well. The desert had been quiet for many days, too quiet. The alien girl had begun to notice the silence more than the sound of her own chains. Now free, she walked beside the human instead of behind, but in her heart, fear still whispered, and doubt still lived like a shadow she could not chase away. That evening, they set camp near a cluster of boulders. The man built the fire as always, steady hands, no words. The girl sat close enough to feel the heat, but far enough to watch him carefully. The memory of the locket haunted her thoughts. A daughter lost, a father grieving. Could such pain belong to a monster? The desert wind shifted, carrying a sound that did not belong. Distant voices, rough and cruel. The girl stiffened, her ears sharp. The man noticed too. He stood quickly, pulling a worn blade from his pack. His face hardened, his tired eyes sharp again. The girl's heart thundered. Who were they? Raiders? Slavers? Shadows appeared beyond the rocks. 3 men wrapped in desert cloth, their eyes cold. One called out in a harsh tongue, "We smelled fire. You're far from safety, traveler." Another's eyes found the girl, and he grinned with hunger. "A slave," he spat, "and a fine one." The girl froze, chains of memory crashing around her. These were the monsters she knew, the ones who had taken her family. Her first instinct screamed, "Run! Leave the human! Save yourself!" But her legs would not move. Her body trembled, caught between fear of the raiders and confusion about the man beside her. The human stepped forward, standing between her and the strangers. His blade glinted in the firelight, his voice low and steady. "She is not yours," he said, though the girl could not understand the words, but she understood his stance. He was not offering her to them. He was protecting her. The raiders laughed, cruel and sharp. One lunged forward, but the man met him with steel. The clash of metal echoed across the rocks. The girl gasped, her heart hammering. She had seen humans fight before, but never for her, never to protect. The second raider circled, reaching toward her. Her body froze again, her mind screaming with terror. But then, something inside her broke free. She grabbed a stone from the ground and hurled it with all her strength. It struck the raider's shoulder, and he cursed, turning back toward her. Her legs wanted to run, but her heart stood firm. She would not let them take her again. The man fought with fierce energy, though his movements showed age and exhaustion. Still, his blade cut true, driving the raiders back. The girl's breath came in gasps. She wanted to close her eyes, to hide. But instead, she found herself watching him. Every strike, every step, he was a wall between her and the danger. At last, the raiders fled into the desert, their curses fading with the wind. The silence returned, broken only by the man's heavy breathing. He lowered his blade, his hand trembling slightly. For a long moment he stood still, his chest rising and falling. Then he turned toward her, his gaze steady, not asking for thanks, not demanding loyalty, only searching her face, as if to see if she was safe. The girl's knees gave way, and she sank to the ground. Her whole body shook, tears burning her eyes, not from fear of him, but from what had just happened. He could have abandoned her. He could have given her back to them. Instead, he fought. Instead, he bled. Her heart whispered a truth she did not want to admit. This man, this human, was not her captor anymore. He had become her protector. She looked at him through blurred eyes, still afraid, still uncertain. But for the first time, a seed of trust took root. Small, fragile, but alive. A trust born not from words, but from action. The fire crackled between them. Neither spoke. But the silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of strangers. It was the silence of 2 lives tied together by danger and choice. The fire was almost gone. only embers glowing red in the sand. The alien girl sat close, hugging the blanket around her shoulders, her eyes still wide from the battle, her heart still racing from the danger. The raiders' voices were gone, their shadows swallowed by the desert night, but their memory remained, sharp as the scars on her wrists. Across from her, the man cleaned his blade, his movements slow, tired. The girl studied him carefully, searching for the monster she had always believed he was. But tonight, she had seen the truth with her own eyes. When the raiders came, he did not sell her. He did not abandon her. He stood, he fought, he bled. For her, her heart whispered a truth she could no longer deny. This human had not bought her to harm. He had bought her to save. The man finally looked at her, his eyes dark but gentle. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. He reached into his coat and pulled out the locket once more. He opened it, showing the smiling face of the girl within. Then he looked at the alien girl, and though she could not understand his words, she felt the meaning in his gaze. I could not save her, but I saved you. Her throat tightened, tears filling her eyes. For so long, she had believed humans were only monsters. But here was one who carried pain, who chose mercy. Her people had been wrong. Not all humans were cruel. Not all humans destroyed. She touched her wrists, still marked by bruises but free of chains. The weight of iron was gone. But another weight lifted too. The weight of fear that had lived in her heart since the day she was taken. The dawn rose slowly, painting the desert with light. The man stood and packed his things, preparing to move again. But this time, she did not follow behind him like a prisoner. She stepped beside him, her head high. The chains were gone, and her steps were her own. As they walked, she felt the desert differently. The sand no longer looked endless and cruel. The horizon no longer whispered death. It whispered possibility. She was no longer walking toward torture. She was walking toward a future she had never dared to imagine. That night, under the stars, she finally spoke aloud in her own language. Her voice soft but steady. Thank you. The man did not understand the words, but when he looked at her, she saw something in his eyes. He understood the meaning, if not the sound. The girl thought of her people, of the warnings and stories. She thought of her cousin, her father, her mother. They would not believe her if she told them what she had seen, that a human could show mercy, that a human could fight not to enslave but to protect. Yet she carried this truth inside her heart now, and it was stronger than any story. The desert stretched wide, but she no longer felt small. She was free, not just in body, but in spirit. The man had given her more than freedom. He had given her a reason to hope. And hope was more powerful than chains. As the fire burned low that final night, she whispered once more, "He gave me freedom, not chains." Her voice was steady, full of something new. Not fear, not doubt, but faith. For the first time since her capture, she closed her eyes without trembling, and in the quiet of the desert, under the endless stars, she slept not as a slave, but as someone truly free.